Of all of Jacqueline Wilson's books, I think My Sister Jody is one of her most heartbreaking, one of the hardest to read. And I'm not going to spoil it, I'm not going to say why, but if you haven't read it and you enjoy Jacqueline Wilson's books, you absolutely must. It is breathtaking. So this was released in 2008, published by Doubleday, and illustrated, of course, by Nick Sharratt. I definitely didn't read this in 2008. I think I read this about 2 years ago. And to cut a very long story short, it's about two sisters, Pearl and Jody. Jody is 14, Pearl is 10. They're polar opposites. And Jody is, I guess, what one would consider a wild child. And Pearl's kind of your stereotypical Jacqueline Wilson character. She's quiet, she's a bookworm, she keeps herself to herself. Jody goes to a new school, and things don't always go to plan, and Jody seems to be spiraling out of control. And then Jody has her good moments, and it's all about Jody's, I guess, personality and how she develops within this narrative. There's not much of a narrative as such. It's more about Jody's progression as a character and how she kind of learns to calm down a bit, but then gets riled about things and becomes angry. So it's very much a character study rather than a narrative. Of course, there is some narrative there. There are highs and lows. There are aspects where you think it's going to go one way, it goes the other way. We have the relationship between Jody and Pearl and that developing, and some constraints that are in place. But for the most part, it's all about Jody and her behaviour and her attitudes. And because Pearl's narrating it, it's quite an interesting perspective. We do get to learn enough about Pearl to know where her thoughts and feelings are coming from, but a lot of it is her perspective on her older sister. And I think that's really paramount, because obviously Jody is not being a good role model for Pearl. And there are times in life where we see the younger child kind of trying to follow in their older siblings' footsteps, and that going very wrong. So it also showcases Jody as a role model, or lack thereof, in the impact that could potentially have on Pearl. So I feel like if you are an older sister or brother reading this, and you do have kind of similar behaviours to Jody, you'd kind of begin to question your own kind of outlook and the way it could damage your siblings. And that's a little bit heartbreaking. But there are other aspects of it that make it emotional. And Jody is not unlikable. Although she's boisterous and mischievous, she has her likable qualities, which is paramount, because otherwise it would not be an interesting read. I definitely, without question, think that it's one of Wilson's hardest hitting. Apparently it's 400 pages, so it's also one of her longest. I don't think it's her longest. I think Opal Plumstead's considerably longer. Lottie Project as well. But it is an intense read, and it's one of those ones that I couldn't put down. And I'm not the target audience. I'm 28. I would have been 20, I don't know, mid-20s when I read this. And I still remember it very vividly. It has stuck with me since then, and I think that's the sign of a powerful book. Wilson's written a lot of fantastic stories, but for me, My Sister Jody is probably in the top 10. If you haven't read it, I thoroughly recommend that you do. It's incredible.